Yeah, welcome to our second video. In here, we will be performing exercise 2. So that is related to prepare for assessment and migration by using Azure Migrate. So if I take you to our whiteboard in here, like we have the Hyper-V. Now, we might be running some workload on this particular Hyper-V. Let's say VM1 is running on here. So we are planning to migrate this VM1 onto Azure Cloud using a service called Azure Migrate. And we can't directly do it. We need to set up our environment related to that. So in that process, like we need to do this particular task one. So what task one does is the Hyper-V environment must be configured so that it can handle that particular assessment and migration process using Azure Migrate. So many things we are going to do in here, like we will just download a script, and then that script will be used for discovering an assessment using Azure Migrate. And this script we will download and install in this particular VM. That's Hyper-V virtual machine. So let me just close this. We don't need this. Now this is the VM. We have taken RDP from Seattle Server 2. Okay, in this VM, we need to run these commands. So let's download this particular PowerShell script. And for that, let me access Windows tab, and here let's download. So this will download a PowerShell script. And what this script does is the script automates the setup. So we need to do some setup, and that setup is automated in this particular script. And that's we require for Azure Migrate to communicate with Hyper-V host. So we have Azure Migrate. So if we need this Azure Migrate to communicate with this Hyper-V host, we need to do some setup. And that setup is automated using this particular PowerShell script. And when we run this script, all these checks will be done. So if you see here, a lot of things are happening here, right? So first, like it will ensure the PowerShell is compatible, and then verify administrator privileges on the Hyper-V host. And for Azure Migrate Hyper-V host communication, okay, it should also enable this port 5985 and 5986 must be open so that the communication can take place properly. Fine. What shall I do now? Once downloaded, let's go and start then. Okay. Select start, and then, okay, we need to run this PowerShell ISE as an administrator. Okay. So we need to run these commands so that we can bring the downloaded script, which is in the downloads, we can bring it to the folder called lab files 07. Let me just try to run them. Yeah. Okay, there is some typo error. It should be set location. So when you go for just PIR, you can see that PowerShell script what we have downloaded, it which was in downloads folder, we just copy to this particular folder called lab files lab 7, and we also removed a tag called downloaded from the internet. So if this flag is removed, then there won't be any security related prompts will pop up just to stop that, avoid that. We just downloaded that, sorry, we just removed that downloaded from the internet. So all these things, see unblock file. So that is the command will remove downloads from the internet flag. All these things are done. I think this is done. Next, on the PowerShell ISE, okay, Let's go and open this particular file. It's in C drive, lab files. Now let's run this particular script. So it will be asking you want to continue yes or no. Based on the given option, you have to say yes for all S other than these two. Okay, let's say yes. And requirement for migrate, yes. Firewall open ports, yes. SMB share, we don't need this option. And then non-administrator local users also no. So task one is done. So we just downloaded the automated script and then we configured the necessary steps so that now migrate can assess and prepare the environment for migration. Now let's continue with task two. And in here, we will go and create an Azure Migrate project in Azure portal. So let's access Azure portal here. So now in the RDP connection to the Hyper-V machine, let's log into portal.azure.com. We need to key in the username and password. No, yes. So once we log in, we will just try to access Azure Migrate. In here, we need to go and create a new project. So discover and access migrate. You need to click this particular option that will take you to create a new project. So you can click create new project. Now let's give resource group name as 02RG and then the project name as this. You can leave it as it is as a specific in advanced settings. I don't think so anything to be changed. And that's it. Let's create this particular project. So now we just created Azure Migrate project. This Azure Migrate project is created. Now this Hyper-V is also having the necessary setup done. So now next thing is that we need to go and implement the target environment, Azure target environment. In this target environment, we will be creating some necessary resources, like when you are trying to migrate some workload from your on-prem onto cloud. So you need the necessary environment, right? So you can directly go and deploy a VM. So you need a VNet and then the subnet, all those things. So that's the target environment we are setting up in this task 3. So be leaving this page open. I will just go and duplicate this particular tab. Let's search for virtual machine. Sorry, virtual network. Let's create a virtual network. Okay. On here, in create virtual network, on the basics tab, we need to create one resource group. Let's go and create this resource group. So the naming convention and then the resource group, you be very careful because there are multiple resource groups. Then there will be dependencies So better to give the same name, and then the selection of resource group must be done properly, just to avoid any confusion or error. Okay, so in our first exercise, we created all the resources in East US, right? So let's put this also in East US itself. Okay, fine, that's done. Next is on the IP address page. No options in the security. On the IP addresses, we need to do some modification. Let's delete this address space. We need to add a new address space, and then that address space must have 10.7.0.0. Fine, now let's add a subnet. The subnet name to be subnet 0, 10.7.0.0/24, and say add 10.7.0.0/16 for vnet/24 for the first subnet. And I can say review, create, and create. So this will create vnet 1. Now let's go and create another vnet. That is going to be the test vnet. I think the deployment is succeeded. Let's continue with the VM2. Okay, let's go search virtual machine, create another one. Let's put it in 03, and then virtual network name, test vnet. And then on the address space, let us make sure that we are giving, and then the region also, it should be East US. Security, no modification on IP address. We can change this, and then this, we can just edit it. This is going to be subnet 0. Yeah, both are two different VNets so that you can have the same subnet names replicated. And say save. So subnet 0, 10, 7. Okay, fine. Everything is okay. Let's review, create, and create. And also we need to create one storage account. Yeah, let me search for storage account. Let's create a storage account. And why we need this particular storage account? When we are trying to migrate from on-prem to Azure, some of the VMs, so we need to replicate some data like VHD files and some snapshots. So for that, we need some temporary staging location. And that's where this Azure storage account comes into place. It just act like a staging location before taking my VM to the target environment, what I am creating. Like in VNet, I have created. So one VNet is for testing purpose and another VNet is for actual migration. And when the data is getting floated to Azure cloud, so we are temporarily putting that data in storage and then we are taking it to the real environment. I'll put it in 03 resource group, storage account name. You can give any name. It must be globally unique. And East US. And then the location, fine. Performance, let it be standard. Redundancy, let it be LRS. Basic step data protection. In here, no modification. In data protection, let's uncheck these boxes. Enable soft delete for blobs and containers. And let's say review, create, and create. Yeah, the target environment is set. Now, next thing is that we need to actually go and discover our on-prem workload, and then we have to migrate them. First, we will test it, and then we will try to migrate it. That we will do in the next video.